Hello? Y'all should be able to see me right now. This is Ty. I gonna let y'all know outside out the gate that it's gonna be a little shaky, a little messy, because I'm carrying equipment plus trying to carry the camera as I'm doing this march and having a handheld mic. But this is a march against ISIS. We are in the city of Orange in California. This is about an hour east of Los Angeles. And they are approaching, they started from a Starbucks, and it seems like they are approaching this facility. And I think this is probably a holding facility for the people that ICE catch. And just let me try to zoom in so y'all can see. So, so if you guys can look at some of the signs, it says never again means close. What does that say? Means close the camps. So I think as I was reading here goes some police right here. As I was reading the invite, I think I think it started by a Jewish person, if I'm not mistaken, because I know they opened things up talking about how the Jewish people said never again with the Holocaust. So it looks like a standoff. Looks like the police is asking them some questions to see if we can get it.
I'm just trying to get inside of the dialogue.
Sure. As far as I'm aware, nobody here is in charge, and I'm here to communicate with your party. So if you want me to talk to them about, I'm happy to do so. We were all beautiful and strong. When the world is sick and no one we well.
So right now, seems like some type of standoff. I'm not sure, but the sheriff is here, and you got people holding against. You can see it. They're not allowing them in. So I want to see what the sheriff does. So I'm gonna keep my eye on them. So, look like they're getting on their phone. Not sure. Maybe they're trying to figure something out. I feel like it's more important to have the police on camera than the people, just in case they try to do something to them.
ICE now. Right now, families are being torn apart. Right now, ICE is terrorizing our neighbors and communities with raids and traffic stops. Right now, our immigrant brothers and sisters searching for a better life in the U.S. are being rounded up from their homes and workplaces. Right now, children are being imprisoned in concentration camps at the border, denied toothpaste, soap, sufficient food, medical attention, and the safety, community, and dignity that all children, all people need and deserve. Right now, there are thousands of children who have reported experiencing sexual violence while in government custody. And these are only the stories that we know of. Right now, we know of at least 6 children who have died, who through their neglect our government has killed. We remember, shame, 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 shame. We remember the millions killed in the Holocaust by sadistic means like gas chambers. But we also remember that there are at least 1 million others, children, that died of disease, malnutrition, and poor living conditions in concentration camps. State-sanctioned deaths takes many heinous forms. So what now? Do we curb our shock until the death toll reaches 50, 100, 200? No! Do we wait until the deaths come in the millions before we act? No! Or do we rise up to support our fellow human beings now? Yes! To protest every starving child? Yes! Every cage? Yes! Every child ripped from a parent's arms? Yes! Every woman forced to endure psychological warfare? Yes! This crisis is not new, nor is it limited to our borders. ICE and their deportation machines are attacking immigrant communities across the country. We have seen this before. We know what happens when average people look away and wait to see. We refuse to be complicit. We refuse to sit back and hope that change will happen on its own. That's right. Children are being detained in horrific conditions. ICE raids are targeting our communities, and people are dying at the border while seeking safety in the U.S. We know these are signs of a mass atrocity. We refuse to wait any longer to see what happens next. We are putting our bodies on the line because when we say never again, we mean it. Never again is now.
Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
Never again is now.
Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
Jews won't stay silent. In the past few weeks, we've heard a lot of politicians, most of them not Jewish, claiming to speak for our Jewish community about this crisis,
Shame!
Expressing more outrage about the words used than they ever have about the conditions themselves. Jews won't stay silent while our historical trauma is weaponized to distract from the trauma ICE is unleashing on immigrant communities right now. We do not invoke the image of concentration camps lightly. We, of all people, know the weight that it carries. It means something unforgivable, horrific. We are here today as Jews to say that this is exactly what's happening right here in the U.S., right here at home. We cannot let this happen again. As American Jews, we have grown up with the stories of the Holocaust deeply ingrained in our collective history. We have survivors in our families and communities. We read books about the Holocaust and visit the places where so many of our ancestors died. The pain we carry, even generations later, is something no culture should have to bear. The children in these detention centers will tell their own stories one day. Stories of abuse, of unlivable conditions, of fleeing a home marked by constant danger, of arriving to a new land of promise only to be locked in a cage, of how they never saw their families again, of how they watched other children grow ill and die, of how they remember the officers who tortured them, of how this land is the United States of America, and they will tell their children, never again. Never again!
Never again!
Never again is now!
Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
Never
again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
I think the people with the cap are like the legal observers.
We're going to keep the peace, make sure no one gets hurt for whatever reason may be, make sure anything gets out of hand.
Okay.
You guys are right to protest, so we're out here just standing by and make sure everything's okay. But also get orders from my sergeant and so on and so forth, then we'll take action.
Okay, I'll relay that message to everybody here. Thank you, appreciate that.
Excuse me, officer, I can't see your name with the thing over there. Y-U-R-I-E-R. Thank you.
Many of us hold these experiences on our own families' histories. The unjust imprisonment of immigrants is yet another brutal chapter in our nation's history. So which side of history will we be on?
The right side.
The left side.
The correct side.
Thank you all for being here. And now we have a story from Rabbi Cohen.
That was amazing. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I am Rabbi Aryeh Cohen, and when I'm not so pissed off at the atrocities that my government is committing in my name, and so pissed off that I got up at 6:30 in the morning and drove an hour to a detention facility, I'm a Talmud teacher. I am an heir to a 2,000-year-old tradition which was created in diaspora. Our people went from country to country seeking refuge and asylum. The reason we are here today is because many countries granted us refuge and asylum. Sometimes they didn't. And oftentimes, after centuries, they kicked us out. And we had to seek refuge and asylum elsewhere. But if nobody's doors were open to us, if in Babylonia, in Spain, in Franco-Germany, in Poland, in Germany for 1,000 years, nobody had let us in, we wouldn't be here today. And so I carry with myself that 2,000-year-old tradition, which is a tradition of travel and migration. I want to tell a story. It's a story that everybody knows. A story about a man named Jacob. Yes, that Jacob. Jacob had a large family. If I was more talented, I'd sing the song. Jacob had a very large family, and one year there was a famine, and his family was in danger of being wiped out. So after a number of times of going to get food from the largest and most powerful country in the region, Egypt, his family migrated to Egypt. And for a while it was okay. And they settled in Egypt, this ragtag band of asylum seekers and refugees. But at a certain point, Pharaoh decided that this ragtag band of refugees was a threat to the most powerful nation in the world. And so he detained them, put them in slave labor camps, took away their freedom, and did everything he could to oppress them and keep them from being able to live their lives. So, as we know, God commissioned Moses to undo that. And Moses' first meeting with Pharaoh, telling him to let his people go, to let them live with dignity, to stop oppressing them, Pharaoh's answer was, why? Who's God? I'm the strongest person in the world. I am the Pharaoh of the strongest country in the world. Well, we know how that turned out. The lesson of Egypt is that power is not static. The lesson of Egypt is that if you are not opposing the oppression, you are supporting the Pharaoh industrial complex. And we are here today because we are not supporting the Pharaoh industrial complex. We are not looking away. When Japanese Americans were loaded on buses in downtown Los Angeles and driven off to concentration camps, people looked away. When Jews were deported from Vichy, France in buses and they wended their way through the city of Paris, people looked away. We are here today because we are saying we are not going to look away. When we say never again, it's not an empty slogan. It means now Never again. We will not abide these. Today, a report came out by the government, by the DHS watchdog, that said that people were being kept in squalid conditions. Children and adults were kept in cells in which it was standing room only with no hygiene, no soap, no facilities. We will not allow that to be done in our name. What we say is never again means now, means stop this.
Never again is now.
Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
And so what we are saying, coming here to say to the refugees, to our brothers and sisters who are inside Theo Lacey, who are inside the Metropolitan Detention Center, who are inside Adelanto, is no estan solo. You are not alone. We are with you. Your well-being is our obligation, because when we say never again, we didn't mean never again will there be a Nazi Germany in 1939 where Jews will be killed, but we meant never again will we allow a group of marginal people to be oppressed because they can't fight back and somebody wants to win another presidential election. Never again means now. Never again means now. Never again means now.
Never again means now.
Thank you.
We are here today because never again means now. Because we are here to make demands. Today we are demanding human rights. We are demanding safety, care, freedom, and permanent protection for all undocumented immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers. We are here today because instead of defunding ICE and CBP, Congress has voted to give them more funding. And that is bipartisan. They voted to give them more funding. So we are here to take matters in our own hands. We join our friends at Movimiento Cosecha in calling on everyone, our own Jewish community, as well as our non-Jewish friends, to take action. We need to make it impossible for ICE to continue with business as usual. That means closing the camps. That means blocking raids. That means material support for the 11 million undocumented people living in constant fear in our country. It means knowing where the nearest ICE detention center is and making sure our neighbors do too, so no one can say, I didn't know. It means putting constant pressure on elected officials whose districts include these camps and holding every single member of Congress who just voted for a package that gives additional funding to DHS accountable for that shameful decision. Yes. That's right. When we say never again, we mean it. Never again is now, and never again means never again for anyone. Nunca más es ahora. 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 Nunca más para nadie. 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 I now want to go ahead and welcome Rabbi Deutsch to lead us in the Mourner's Kaddish. I don't know if there's services.
Now we're going to change things later. All right.
For just joining us.
You are welcome. You are welcome. You are welcome.
I've got 6. I've got 6 of them. Thank you. I gave one. I gave one to someone earlier. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Okay, do you like them or pass it down? Okay, great. All right, I'm Rabbi Stacia Deutsch, and several months ago I went with Hayes and Trua to El Paso to see what was happening on the border for myself. We watch the news every day. We see glimmers and glimpses of what is actually going on the border. So I wanted to see. We went to detention facilities, we went to a children's detention facility, and we crossed into Juarez to see where the Remain in Mexico program was holding people while they waited for an immigration lawyer or a status change or any miracle possibly that could happen for them. And what we saw was the government tour of Otero, a large detention facility. We saw the government tour of a Key West facility in downtown El Paso. What we saw was shiny. We saw immigrants standing outside, a group of men playing volleyball. We saw a medical facility where we were told that doctors are coming regularly to help people. We saw a beautiful dining room and people cooking in the kitchen. We saw bunk beds, reminiscent of our past, but in a large, not overflowing room, and we saw iPads where we were told that the asylum seekers could watch videos and rent movies if they wanted. We saw a room where one immigrant was teaching guitar to others. We saw shiny. And then later in the day, we met with lawyers who told us stories about people being in solitary confinement, that the asylum seekers in the shelter were being given $1 a day, and to watch a video cost $3. To make a phone call cost money. We had seen a room where people could go for legal help, and there were law books if they wanted to try and figure it out on their own. And we were told there was no internet access. We saw the shiny. And now, these months later, we are seeing photos from inside the facility without the shiny. We know what is going on. We are seeing it in real time every day. And if those photos yesterday didn't move us and compel us to action, nothing will. It is up to us to say, never again. We do not want to see the shiny. We want the shiny to end. We want the reality to end. And we are here to facilitate that change. Are the candles lit? It's not going to light. They're not going to light. Oh, that's a bummer. Okay, we're going to symbolically light our candles. They're lit. They're lit.
Anybody have?
Is it the matches or it's the candles?
It's both.
All right.
And the wind.
Do you need a lighter?
Yeah, actually, that'd be helpful. Excuse me.
While they're lighting the candles,
So it looked like we got a larger sheriff presence out here.
I'll read
I'm seeing to the side, so they must have came from the back side. And then we have
We
them
walk
over here
in
as
the
well.
footstep of our ancestor Abraham, who stitched worlds together, who saw the connection everywhere, who was commanded to be a blessing to all.
And you can see they have two legal observers
We know that it is so much
who are making sure that the police do the right thing, which is good. So now I think he's talking to the guy. He's like I don't want to know if to call him the leader or not, but he's the one that he's like the go-to person that the police keep talking to. The young man with the white t-shirt on. And the guy with the green hat is a legal observer. Someone, like I said, to make sure that the police do the right thing. I can assume that they are trying to negotiate something, but their intention is to protest this. I don't think no one is going to compromise.
As I recite each name, I'd like one of the people who holds the candle to extinguish that flame. Normally with a yardstick candle, a memorial candle, we let it burn for 24 hours to remember that person. Blowing the candle out today does not mean that we are going to forget. Blowing the candle out today represents a life that was extinguished that shouldn't have been. A life that was given in the name of a search for freedom and expression of self and just a better place to live. So with each name, I'll start there, if you'll just extinguish the candle. Darlene Cristobal Cordova Valle, 10 years old. Jacqueline Kaal McQueen, 7 years old. Felipe Gomez Alonso, 8 years old. Juan de Leon Gutierrez, 16 years old. Wilmore Jose Ramirez Vasquez, 2 years old. Carlos Hernandez Vasquez, 16 years old. I thought we would end this ritual moment with singing together Oseh Shalom, a prayer for peace and a world that we hope we can make better, a world we know that just by being here, we can make better. We are all children of the same source. So together we sing, Oseh Shalom Bimromah, Oseh Shalom Aleinu, Be'al Kol Yisrael,
As usual, we are here to stand in solidarity with the migrants who are imprisoned here and the camps across the country. Not just in crisis at the border, but crisis across the whole world.
Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Be'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Be'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Be'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom.
So it seems like everybody's singing right now. I want to make sure that I'm like right here just in case something crack. And it needs to be filmed. So I'm in a good position. Make sure the cops know I'm on their ass. Yeah. So.
Never again means abolish ICE.
Never again means abolish ICE.
Never again means close the camps.
Never again means close the camps.
Never again means never again for anyone.
Never again means never again for anyone.
Never again is now.
Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
We are here as Jews because our liberation is bound up in the liberation of every human being. Anti-immigrant rhetoric in the media and from political figures is often deeply intertwined with anti-Semitic rhetoric. Conspiracies about George Soros orchestrating immigrant and refugee caravans to replace white Americans are conspiracies to demonize both Jews and immigrants. Not only are they at the root of much anti-Semitic violence like the devastating Pittsburgh shooting, they're also tools of justification for ICE's reign of terror against millions of immigrants of color. We carry with us the history of the Holocaust along with experiences of displacement, of persecution from around the world. Our fight for immigrant justice is bound with a continued fight against anti-Semitism. We remember that, like the immigrants of today, hundreds of thousands of Jews were turned away from America's borders when they were most in need. We know from our own history the importance of solidarity and of communities taking risks to support each other in times of danger. Some of us are here and alive today because decades ago, people of integrity risked their own lives to hide our relatives in their homes, supply them with false identification, and even take in our children as their own. Where would so many of us be today without those people who took a risk? We know how high the stakes are. Our history and this present moment compel us to act, to show up as a community in solidarity.
Yes. Yes.
And now we have someone reading a poem and Psalm 121. If not,
As Jewish poet and activist Emma Lazarus said, until we are all free, we are none of us free. Our fight is not over until the last chains have dropped from wrists of the last person unjustly detained. Until all immigrants can live without fear. We say, your fight is our fight. 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 Emma Lazarus, a fourth-generation American Jew, was a descendant of one of the 23 Portuguese Jews who came here to flee the Inquisition in Brazil. Before World War II, even before the American Revolution, Jews found the United States a welcoming place for immigrants, a place where the persecuted could find opportunity, freedom from oppression, and a safe place to raise their families. Emma understood this about America, the American dream, and she wrote this: not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor with that twin city's frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Whether on the harbors of New York City, the beaches of Miami, the bridges of San Francisco, or the deserts of our southern border, we lift our lamp beside the golden door. We welcome you. We gather, and we say never again. In times of distress, it is a Jewish custom to recite psalms or Tehillim as a call and response. In this psalm, Psalm 121, we pray for the protection and safety of those detained at the border. But I'm going to need someone with much better grasp of Hebrew than me to lead us in it. So if I have any volunteers, it's written down.
It's transliterated.
It's transliterated. Sorry, secular upbringing. Yeah, that's true.
Shir Hamalot, Esainai Larim, Me'ayin Yavo Ezri. Okay, we'll do it in shorter phrases.
Yeah.
Esa Einai El Haharim.
Esai enai el ha'arim.
Me'ayin Yavo Ezri.
Me'ayin yavo ezri.
I lift my eyes to the mountains, from where will come my salvation?
I lift my eyes to the mountains, from where will come my salvation.
Ezri Me'im Adonai.
Ezri me'im Adonai.
Osei Shamayim Ba'aretz.
Osei shamayim ba'aretz.
My salvation is from God.
My salvation is from God,
who created heaven and earth.
who created heaven and earth.
Al yitain lamot raglecha.
Al yitain lamot raglecha.
Al yanum shomrecha.
Al yanum shomrecha.
Do not let your feet be weary.
Do not let your feet be weary.
Let not your guards fall asleep.
Let not your guards fall asleep.
Hinei lo yanum velo yishan.
Hinei lo yanum velo yishan.
Shomer Yisrael.
Shomer Israel.
Behold, the guardian of Israel will neither sleep nor drop off. Drowse. Something like that.
Behold, the guardian of Israel will not sleep or be drowsy.
There you go. Adonai Shomrecha.
Adonai Shomrecha.
Adonai Tzilcha al yad yaminecha.
Adonai Yitzha al yad yaminecha.
God will guard over you.
God will guard over you.
God will be at your right hand.
God will be at your right hand.
Yomam Hashemesh lo yakeka.
Yamam Hashemesh lo yakeka.
V'yareach balayla.
V'yareach balayla.
During the day the sun will not beat down on you.
During the day the sun will not beat down on you.
And the moon at night.
and the moon at night.
Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra.
Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra.
Yishmor et nafshecha.
Yishmor et nafshecha.
God will guard you from all evil.
God will guard you from all evil.
He will guard your soul.
He will guard your soul.
Adonai yishmor tzedcha uvoecha.
Adonai yishmor tzitza uvayeka.
Me'ata b'yad olam.
Me'ata b'yad olam.
God will guard your goings and your comings from now until forever.
God will guard your goings and your comings from now until forever. Thank you.
The Mishavera, the prayer for healing, asks not just for physical healing, but for emotional healing, for strength to keep seeking healing, and for strength to keep offering healing. For the families of the 6 children that we know of who have died unnecessarily in ISIS concentration camps, whose grief we can only imagine. For the children suffering in cages. For the immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers risking their lives to seek safety here in our borders. And for us and our communities, that we can find within ourselves the strength to sustain this fight, to not give up until all people are safe, free, and healed. We pray. And sing the Mishavera.
So they got some people bringing in food as well. So I don't know how long they plan on staying by the door, but they have people bringing them like snacks and water, just in case they get hungry. This lady right here, she's bringing them food, offering them some, but they kind of are like chain linked together by their arms, so they're not moving. Seems like they're singing a hymn. So this march, this is the facility. It's called the Lacey facility. This is one of the ICE facilities, and it seemed like this protest was organized by a Jewish some type of Jewish association or something to that nature, because it's like I think a part of the description was talking about how Jewish people, when they said never again, it wasn't just speaking about the Holocaust, but any migrant, immigrant that comes to a place where they are prosecuted just because they're different.
I wanted to see for myself what was happening in these detention facilities, and I wanted to make clear that the people who were being illegally held in these facilities were not forgotten, and that they were being spoken for and fought for. And so I, with a group of people last fall, visited the Adelanto ICE facility, which is run by Geo Group out in Palmdale, Lancaster. And we worked as liaisons between legal representatives who are not able to go and visit the detainees that they were representing in these facilities. We were not allowed to pass any messages to them on paper, so we had to write our messages to them on our bodies. I met with 2 women who were being detained in these facilities, women who had lived in the United States, one for over 10 years and one for over 15 years. Both of them had been tricked by ICE agents coming to their children's schools dressed in plain clothes, telling them that they were their mother's friends and asking their children to call their mothers to pick them up, where they were arrested in front of their children and were not able to communicate with them following that time. It was in visiting these women that I felt it was imperative to pressure legislators immediately to defund ICE and CBP, that there was no time to waste. It needed to happen immediately. So I, along with other members of activist groups advocating for immigrant justice We're canvassing and helping to elect Democrats such as Katie Hill, who promised to defund ICE and CPB, who promised to tackle these atrocities that are happening here in Los Angeles. And we helped flip their seats, their districts from red to blue and get them elected. And then we went and met with Katie Hill last November after we helped to elect her. We met with her staff in her offices, which are in Santa Clarita, very close to Adelanto, where her staff told us, yes, we are in this fight with you. We want to defund ICE and CBP. We are appalled by what is happening at Adelanto. And then last week, Katie Hill voted to give ICE more funding. Shame! We have so much more work to do. We need to hold these Democrats accountable. This will only happen if we fight together. This is the people's fight. We need to pressure legislators. Never again means now.
Never again means now. Never again means now. Never again means now.
I have to change the battery for a second.
This past week, we watched 20 candidates for the Democratic
Just got to change the battery.
We heard them debate immigration plans, DACA, the crisis at the border. No doubt over the coming months, they will continue to speak on these pressing issues. But we cannot wait until 2020. We have elected officials in office right now, some that we helped elect, people we voted for, people we put our trust in. Servants sworn to represent the will of the people. We hold you accountable for taking action now. We cannot be.
Give me 1 second. I just got to change the camera battery.
We will sing. We will chant. We will gather. We call on you. The lives and futures of countless people are at risk every day, and this cannot wait for 2020. Never again is now.
Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now. Never again is now.
Speaker Nancy Pelosi backed down from the with violence. Do not let the rhetoric of right-wing extremists guide your politics. Their hatred is the minority. So we call on our elected officials to do more, to listen to the will of the people, to save lives. We know that the problem extends far beyond Trump's wall, the attack on dreamers, and family separation at the border. It extends to the 11 million undocumented immigrants in this country who live in constant terror of ICE violence. We therefore call not only on our elected officials, but each and every one of us to not be complicit. We must do whatever is in our power to disrupt ICE, to close these camps, to provide permanent protection, and to ensure that never again means never again. For some of us today, that means putting our bodies on the line. Woo! But we need everyone to take action. Does anyone want to lead us in the closing song for courage?
Okay. So again, I will do it line by line so that we learn the words and then we'll sing it together. Courage.
Courage.
My friend.
My friend.
You do not walk alone.
You do not walk alone.
We will.
We will
Walk with you.
walk with you
And sing your spirit home.
and sing your spirit home.
Okay, the first two lines are like call and response, and then we sing it together. So I'll be gesturing with my hands to like lead us in that. So, courage,
Courage.
my friend,
My friend.
you do not walk alone. We will
We will
walk with you
walk with you
and
sing your spirit home.
courage,
Courage.
my friend.
My friend, you do not walk alone.
else have a story that they'd like to share or would like to speak, we're going to open the floor. Yep.
I'm speaking here on behalf of my grandparents, Frida and Leon Kuczynski, who survived the war, and their parents who didn't. I live because of the kindness of strangers and the fact that I don't look very Jewish. And I've been told that thousands of times in my life. You don't look Jewish. It's a terrible, terrible legacy that blue eyes are the reason I live. And I don't think that because I have the privilege of passing that I don't need to stand up with my Jewish brothers and sisters and with my human brothers and sisters to protest an injustice. There are kids dying. There are adults who don't know where their parents are, and all of us are responsible for that. Everyone here, if we're not protesting, is complicit. Even if we are protesting in some ways, probably we're still complicit in ways we don't understand. And I don't want to be silent. When Donald Trump was elected president, my grandmother looked at me and said, "This is how it started. The Holocaust is coming again." My whole life, my grandfather told us to be prepared to hide when the Holocaust came again. When we chose not to circumcise our son, he says, "Good, that'll make it easier for him to pass when the Holocaust comes again." All my life I thought my grandfather was a wonderful man, but come on. And it turns out I was wrong and he was right. And these are concentration camps. They may not be death camps, but they are concentration camps. And there is no room for us to listen to people from outside our community who want to redefine terms. Language is an important skill. We have language. Our people died in concentration camps. If we don't own those terms and leverage them now, what are we saying to our ancestors who died? Amen. Anne Frank died of typhus, by the way. Typhus is carried by fleas and ticks, and children in these camps have fleas now, and ticks and lice. And this is, maybe not the fleas and the ticks, but the lice. I'm a little overwrought. It's our duty to do for them what I wish more people would have done for our people.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say.
Amen. Amen.
I would like to speak.
Perfect. Well, when we think we've got a song.
For as long as the United States has existed, children have been in prisons. I am against children in any sort of prison. I am against any sort of prison. I'm against concentration camps. You cannot get well in a cell. You have no humanity, and it has to be stopped. Not just in the concentration camps, but all over. When we allow small children to be caged, I don't know how to tell other people that you should care about other people. I don't know how to give this to you in a way that, you're not going to talk about at your Thanksgiving, which, by the way, we're on stolen land. How dare you put that on children and say, you don't belong here? We don't belong here in other ways. And it's our right to say that there is no zip code on humanity. There is no line that separates you from me in terms of the borders are not real. They're only real because we have an obsession with policing. And until we stop that, more people will die.
That's right. So I have a song to share, and this song is from when I was over there, not today, but a few years ago, which we thought it would be like a 20-minute sit-in, and it was 12 hours, so buckle up. But that was good, right? It's a political crisis that you're creating, and the longer they ignore you and make you stand there, the more we're winning. So it goes like this. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're still here. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're still here. We rise. We rise. We rise. We rise. In hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here. In hope, in prayer, we're still here. In hope.
name's Nathan. I'm here because, for a lot of reasons. One of them is 32 members of my family died in the Holocaust, and I feel a strong responsibility to step up and do whatever I can to help people in this scenario who are facing, we don't have a Holocaust on our hands yet, but the Holocaust didn't start like the Holocaust. It wasn't the Holocaust on day one. It started with people not paying attention and shadowy detention facilities and agents of the government being able to do whatever they want and detain whoever they want without warrants, without any type of due process, and put them in facilities that are horrific, to say the least. And I can't help but think if more members of my family would be alive today, if people in that community have been willing to stand up and say, hey, this is not okay, we don't accept this just because they're different from us, they're Jews, or they're immigrants, or whatever. And it's important that we all, especially as Jews, but that we all step up and stand up and say that this is not okay, and that we will not stand for this, and it is not in our name. And the fact that we can't talk about it because we can't call them concentration camps because they're not as bad as Dachau or some of the other concentration camps is an insane bar to me. We need to call them what they are, and what we have at the border are concentration camps. And people are dying, and women are being forced to drink out of toilets, and kids are living in their own filth, and kids are taking care of smaller kids, and just, we all need to do our part. And we need to remember, and that's why I'm here today, is we need to remember it's not just at the border. There is a crisis at the border, but there's also a crisis in our communities. That this is 5 minutes, this is 5 minutes from my house, from where I live. And ICE is going through immigrant communities and terrorizing them. Like the story that I heard one of you tell earlier of them taking away the parents of the children by luring them to the school. This is not in some vacuum somewhere. This is here. This is in America, where we live, to our neighbors, and we need to do something and stand up, and that's why I'm here today.
Close the camps!
So I grew up, I'm Jewish and Japanese, but my name is Liam Raleigh Davis because my mom grew up with the name Kazuko right after World War II. And so she did, when I was born, she gave me her father's last name, and she made my dad choose the most Gentile sounding Hebrew name he could, which was Liam, or Liam, because she said that having an ethnic name for her was a burden, and she didn't want me to have to deal with that. And so, like, carrying the history of Japanese internment and carrying the history of Jewish internment was really difficult for me growing up. My parents instilled in me this idea that, you know, you need to, like, watch out and make sure that you have a plan, because if something happens, there's never been anyone there for us before, and there never will now. But I'm here because they're wrong, because I'm here for these people, and these people will be here for me. I don't know the people that are detained here personally, but I know that if I can do something to prevent other people from being harmed, then other people will do something to prevent me from being harmed. I know that my freedom rests on the freedom of others, and that if we let these people be murdered, if we let genocide happen again here, there's nothing that's going to prevent it from happening to other communities. There's nothing that's going to prevent it from happening to my community. You know, and I can't let that happen. I can't move to Israel. I don't want that legacy. I want to be here. And for me to be here, I know that everyone who is here has to be here.
Does anyone else want to speak?
I will.
Just go one and then right after.
I'm Cantor Shannon McGrady Bain, and the most common commandment in the Hebrew Bible is what? To welcome the stranger. We need to welcome the stranger. I want to share with you a song by Cantor Linda Hirschhorn. Circle around for freedom, circle around for peace, for all of us imprisoned, circle for release.
Circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole.
Woman over here who wanted to speak. Yep, right there.
You know exactly what
So I hope I can project my voice. I don't know, can't promise. And this may be a little long, and for that I apologize. And I want to preface the stories from my family that I'm about to tell, which go from the beginning of the 20th century, there's about 4 sections of this, up through including World War II, by saying 2 things. First of all, what the stories that I have to tell you, I wish to tell you as a means of giving respect and honor to my grandmother Rose, Zichrono Livracha, and to my father Maurice, Zichrono Livracha. Both of them immigrants, grateful immigrants to the United States, so I stand before you as an immigrant's daughter. The other thing I want to say before I tell these stories, because I never hear it said, I haven't heard it said by politicians who have a platform day after day. I haven't heard it said by journalists who have a platform to say it every day. And I wish they would say what I'm about to say about the UN Convention on Asylum Seekers and Refugees. Because if this information entered into the national conversation, Americans would be educated. Okay, educated about the subject of with regard to the law, asylum seekers and refugees. According to this international convention on asylum seekers and refugees, international law to which the United States is signatory and which the United States has ratified, any person who either comes to the border of the United States or dares to cross over the border of the United States has the right to do so. That person is not a criminal. That is not a criminal act according to international law.
And United States law.
And United States law. Okay, they therefore, they have the right to declare themselves as asylum seekers. There are procedures that they're not being followed by this country or many countries, but there are procedures for quickly processing these people, determining whether in fact they deserve refugee status. This gives them certain basic rights to health care, to education for their children, to being integrated into communities until they can safely go back to wherever they are.
Just stepped out. Making sure I have the police in my sights, just in case they try to do something. I need to change the mic battery. This is what happens when you're a one-man band. My nose is running. I gotta keep taking this backpack on and off. This is gonna get loud just for a second. That wasn't bad. Excuse me for the sniffling. All of a sudden, my sinus is starting to kick in.
Without a name like these women, brave, heroic woman, jumps in front of her husband with her baby, my father, in her arms. And she says, if you are going to kill my husband, you might as well kill me. My interpretation of this is she understood that if she lost the breadwinner, her life was done. The story in the family passed on from my mother, from my grandmother to my father, is that a look came in to this Cossack's eyes. A look. Something changed. The family always said maybe he remembered a young wife and child that he had left at home. He lowered his weapon, he turned around, he leapt out over the windowsill and continued on his way, and the life of my family was saved. Now, I have given a lot of thought about that because I've been reading about this Facebook group with 9,500 members of, I don't know if it's ICE, I don't know if it's the customs people. CP, what is it called?
CBP.
CBP. 9,500 members, some of whom are writing these horrible things about the asylum seekers, mocking them, calling them subhuman, horrible things that they're writing, egging each other on. Some others in this group are silently complicit. I'm assuming it's a Facebook group. Some people are hitting the like button. There is safety in a group. There is peer pressure in a group. These guys have jobs, they've got badges, they've got families, they've got salaries, they've got colleagues. They're scared. They're scared to break away from the group. But what I would like to say is this, and I'm thinking about this guy who had this moment of compassion and chose not to murder the family. And they were murdering and maiming people all along the street. And I know they're saying about this faith group, they're egging each other on and calling each other family. That is not your family. And at some point, each of these individual 9,500 people has a name. They have a responsibility. They will make a moral or immoral choice. You cannot sit on the fence. And I am hoping, what is relevant here is that I believe there are some decent people who have joined these organizations, but they have an ethical choice to make. They can't just sit on the fence. They can't. And I hope some of them will behave as this Cossack did and have this moment of suddenly of self-awareness, of compassion, remove himself from the group, the peers who are encouraging him to behave inhumanely and to behave humanely. That's story number one. Thank you. That's story number one.
If I could say something just in case they pull us away before I get the chance. Just briefly, people are dying, families are being separated, people are being crammed into cages in which they don't fit, and living in horrible conditions that anyone can go online and see pictures of posted by official government agencies. I think by this point, every single person knows that this is a problem, and every single person, or at least I would hope most people, know that this is something where they should do something. And if you're anything like me, just a few days ago you were walking to dinner and talking to your girlfriend about this is terrible, but what is anyone supposed to do? There are things you can do. It's not hard to find them. If you're watching this, you know one. There are people organizing. And I know it's hard to believe that any individual person making an individual choice can make any sort of difference, but groups do make differences, and groups only exist if individuals make the decisions to act. Every single person here had reasons not to come today. They had things they could have done. They had TV shows they could have sat home and watched. And every single person had to combat that inertia and make the choice to drive out here early in the morning. And that's something you can do as well. You just have to make the decision to act. We're not special people. We're just like you. So please do something.
May I continue my story?
oh.
May I continue my story?
Other people might want to speak, yeah. Yeah, I'll be really quick. I just want to add, we're making it like our community is helping, another community, but there are lots of Latinx Jews, there are lots of migrant Jews, and there are probably Jewish people in these camps, and it's not a us-them thing, we're helping our own community, and I am a first-generation American. My grandmother was in Auschwitz, my father was born in a displaced persons camp in Germany, and I'm here because the American system allowed us as refugees to come here. And they rejected many of us before, and they did reject many Holocaust survivors who resettled in Latin America who would take them, who are likely now the descendants of Holocaust survivors who are migrants trying to get into this country today, especially in places with huge amounts of unrest. There's a huge population of Jews in Venezuela, in many places in Latin America, and we cannot forget that this is not just helping another community, it's helping our own people, and there are our own people there are Jews there, and we can't forget about them. And luckily enough, we're all here by the grace of God and the grace, many of us, of the American system that let us in, but there are many of us that are not so lucky, and it's not a us versus them thing. It's not just a hippie kind of idea of we're all one people. There are literally our people, and we need to fight for them.
Good morning, everybody. Boker Tov L'Kulam. I'd like to teach you a very inspiring song.
Can we use the end of the story that began?
Yeah, can we? I'd love to hear the end of her story.
Yeah, please.
Oh, thank you.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So I don't know if I can make it short. I don't know. It's a long story. Well, the short version of it is that somehow my paternal grandfather made it over to the United States before World War I. They didn't know World War I was coming, and what they would do in those days is the breadwinner would, if he were lucky enough to get over to the United States, would then send money home and would save money and then bring over the rest of the family. That did not happen.
So, seems like they're talking. They are, I'm going to see if I can talk to one of these legal observers so I can just get some more information, because this battery's about to die now, too. See, how are you? Are you a legal observer?
I am a legal observer.
Can you tell me about how this started? And I know it was a Jewish group that got it together, and the reasons behind it, what's been happening here at this facility specifically?
I don't know if it's this facility specifically. I'm going to be real honest with you. I don't know shit about this group. But I do know that nationally there have been a lot of Jewish groups coordinating together to make statements and do direct actions around ICE, and that this is part of, it seems to be a part of that rash of actions nationally. But for me personally, I just got a call from the NLG saying that they needed legal observers and stuff, and I volunteered, so I'm here.
Okay, so is that normally how it works? If they have organizations that know of groups that's going to come out that may get arrested, that would need legal observers to help them out?
Yeah, I mean, the National Lawyers Guild has historically, since the Civil Rights Movement, provided legal observing to groups who are trying to resist, systemic systems of power and shit like that. So if folks want legal observing or feel like there's going to be a need and would like advice or consultation, or folks to come out and try and legal observe and maintain a neutral position and document what's going on with the police, if there's availability, the NLG will try and provide. So.
How long have you been doing it?
Observing, I don't know, 3-4 years. Yeah, I want to say.
That's a good amount of time. Have you seen a spike since Trump's been in office? Like for people warning legal observers?
I mean, definitely. Just in terms of the amount of direct actions, for sure. There have been lots and lots of direct actions since Trump.
I got arrested in St. Louis as the press. They arrested the press, but it was the first time that I saw the legal observers, and they arrested them as well.
Oh yeah, sometimes it'll happen. I mean, the police are aware of what we're doing, and just now, I think one of the cops was looking over my shoulder trying to read my notes and stuff. So, but again, we're not here to participate in the action. We're here to maintain,
Make sure that everything is good, everything is safe, that the police is acting the way they're supposed to act, right?
I think that's the effect, but really our intention is just to document things neutrally so that if, for example, there's like litigation that follows, then we can use our notes to provide sort of like, you know, neutral, airtight documentation of what occurred, because that's really all we're doing. Like, we're watching the police, but we're also making sure that everything is sort of documented and sort of, we're not here to necessarily provide legal support. I'm sure maybe they have their own legal team, I don't know, but
It's just to provide assistance if it goes to court, like you have information, so it won't just be their word against theirs. It'll have
exactly, to create like a paper trail or like, you know, other documentation. And like, we don't participate again because we want to maintain like neutrality and not have biased notes or anything like that, so that's not what we're trying to do. So we're not here as participants, we're here as observers.
Cool. What's your name?
Gina?
Gina?
Yeah, Gina. Do you need my last name?
No, I don't need to.
Okay, well, yeah, sure.
The law.
The National Lawyers Guild is the name of the group that I'm here legal observing with, but you don't need to be an attorney to be a legal observer, so if you want to volunteer and do that kind of stuff, you can, you know, find your local NLG chapter and volunteer if you'd like. But I am an attorney, and I work for the Los Angeles Center for Community Law and Action. We do anti-displacement work in East LA and Boyle Heights. So I just want to plug myself since I have a mic.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. All right. So that was a legal observer. The reason that I knew it was a legal observer is because she had a green